I can still hear her voice. The cold calm in it. You've had your time, Margaret. That property should belong to the next generation, to us. Stop being selfish. My daughter-in-law, Samantha, said those words like she was asking for the salt at dinner. No hesitation, no guilt, just entitlement dressed in a smile. The room went quiet. The only sound was the clink of her fork against the china plate. My son, Ethan, stared at his glass of water like it could save him. He couldn't even look me in the eye. I had fed that boy, clothed him, worked 3 jobs so he could go to college. And now, he sat beside the woman who dared to tell me that everything I built, my life's work, no longer belonged to me. My hands trembled under the table, but I forced a smile. You think my time is over? I asked softly. Samantha leaned back in her chair, smirking. Well, isn't it? You've done enough. Let us take over. It wasn't a request. It was a demand. That was the day my heart broke, and hardened at the same time. Before I begin, I want to mention that my revenge channel, Mama True Story, is having a $200 giveaway to celebrate our subscribers. I can hardly believe so many people are interested in these stories. To participate, it's simple: subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, like this video, and leave a comment telling me where you're watching from, a little about yourself, or share a beautiful story. I'd love to know who you are. Now, let's get back to my story. You see, I wasn't always rich. And I never planned to be. The truth is, every dollar I have, every brick, every wall, every rental home, was born out of pain. I lost my husband, Robert, when I was 45. A construction accident took him away and left me with nothing but his old tool belt and a teenage son to raise alone. I could have fallen apart, but instead, I turned grief into fire. I started cleaning houses, baking bread, fixing leaky sinks, learning how to paint walls and negotiate with landlords. One house became 2, then 4, then 8. By the time I was 70, I had built a small real estate empire worth over $2 million, every cent earned the hard way. I thought my sacrifices would protect my son. I thought he'd see the strength, not the struggle. But love can blind you, even when betrayal is sitting across the table, smiling with perfect lipstick. That day, when Samantha slid a folder across the table and asked me to sign everything over, I realized something chilling: they had planned this. Every dinner invitation, every soft question about retirement, every fake smile, it was all part of the setup. I looked at my son, the same boy who used to run into my arms after school, and asked quietly, "Is this really what you want?" He didn't answer. So, I folded the paper, pushed it back, and said the one thing I knew would haunt them both. If you want my legacy so badly, you'll have to take it from my cold, dead hands. Samantha laughed, but I saw the flicker in her eyes, that moment of fear when she realized I wasn't a weak old woman. And that's when I decided. If they wanted a fight, I would give them one they'd never forget. When people look at me now, they see a woman who owns 8 rental properties and think I must have had help. But the truth is, no one ever helped me. Not once. After Robert died, I spent months staring at the walls of our small brick house in Cincinnati. The silence felt heavy, like the whole world had stopped breathing. I'd wake up expecting to hear his boots by the door, but all I heard was the hum of the refrigerator and my own heartbeat. Bills piled up. Letters came from the mortgage company. And every time I looked at our teenage son, Ethan, I told myself, you don't get to give up. I started small, cleaning houses in the same neighborhoods where I once walked with Robert. Then, one day, a kind old landlord I worked for told me he was selling a duplex. I didn't have the money, but I had determination. I begged the bank for a small loan, promised them I'd make every payment on time, and I did. That duplex became my classroom. I learned to paint, patch walls, fix pipes, and negotiate rents. Every tenant taught me something, some good, some hard. And slowly, one door became 4. When the housing market crashed in 2008, everyone panicked. Friends told me to sell before I lost everything. But I didn't. I trusted my gut. Instead, I bought 2 foreclosed homes for half their price. I spent every night sanding floors and repainting walls myself. By the time the economy recovered, those same homes had doubled, no, tripled, in value. That's when people started whispering, calling me the lady landlord. But I never cared about titles. What mattered to me was security, something no one could take away again. I built my small business honestly. I rented mostly to working-class families, single moms, veterans, students. People like me. I gave them fair rent, and in return, they treated my homes like their own. Some still send me Christmas cards to this day. By 2022, I was 70 years old, driving a worn-out Buick with more miles than I could count, but those properties? They were worth over $2 million. Every penny of it was earned with sweat, sleepless nights, and faith. That's what made Samantha's words sting even more. She never saw the blisters on my hands from scrubbing other people's floors. She never saw me cry when the bank almost foreclosed after Robert's death. All she saw was the end result, the wealth. And my son. Somewhere along the line, he forgot the woman who raised him. I remember the last Christmas before things went bad. Ethan visited with Samantha for dinner. I made his favorite, chicken pot pie, mashed potatoes, and lemon cake. Samantha barely touched her food. She scrolled through her phone, sighed, and said, "Your home's cute. Very vintage." Vintage. That's what she called the house Robert built with his bare hands. Ethan laughed, a small, careless laugh that told me he didn't even notice how much it hurt. That was the first time I felt a shift. Like someone quietly locking a door inside me. Love makes you blind, and I'd been blind to how far he'd drifted from the values I taught him. He wanted more, the fast life, the success, the image. And Samantha was his ticket there. But the thing about fast success? It never lasts. And soon enough, the cracks would start to show. Because no matter how beautiful greed looks on the outside, it always rots from within. The first sign came when Samantha called me one night, pretending to care. But I soon realized, she wasn't checking on me. She was checking on my money. It started small, like most betrayals do. Not with shouting, not with slammed doors, but with questions. "Mom," Samantha said one evening over the phone, her voice sugar-sweet. "How many houses do you actually own now?" I laughed softly, not realizing yet what she was really asking. 8, sweetheart." "Why?" "Oh, just curious," she replied. That must be a lot to handle at your age. That sentence stuck with me, at your age. It sounded innocent, but something in her tone made my stomach twist. A few days later, Ethan called. "Mom, have you ever thought about letting someone help manage the rentals? Maybe I could take over the paperwork for you." That's when I knew. Those weren't just questions. They were feelers, small tests to see how close they could get to the vault without sounding suspicious. I'd heard stories like this before, grown children turning on their parents once money entered the picture. I just never thought I'd live one. Still, I tried to give them the benefit of the doubt. They were family, after all. When Ethan and Samantha lost their apartment in Chicago after his job downsized, I didn't hesitate to offer one of my rentals. "You can stay there until you get back on your feet," I said. They agreed, promising to pay rent once things stabilized. That promise faded faster than morning dew. Month after month passed with no payment. The excuses came easily. "Sponsorships are slow right now, we're waiting on a new job offer, the market's tough." But I could see Samantha's Instagram posts, dinners at fancy restaurants, designer handbags, vacations. She was living like a queen, in my house. One afternoon, I dropped by unannounced. The front yard looked different. My white picket fence had been replaced with a modern metal gate. My rose bushes were gone, replaced by sleek garden stones and neon lights. Inside, I froze. They had completely remodeled the kitchen, marble counters, gold faucets, new cabinets. Samantha came out smiling, holding a glass of wine. Surprise, she said cheerfully. I used your credit card for the upgrades, hope you don't mind. It'll increase the property's value. I stared at her, my hands trembling. You used my card? Without asking? She shrugged, sipping her drink. Oh, come on, Margaret. It's just money. We're family. Family. I left that day with a fake smile and a storm brewing inside me. That night, I sat alone at my dining table, staring at the stack of property papers spread before me. My late husband's photo watched from the mantel, his kind eyes steady as ever. Robert, I whispered, our son's wife is turning our home into a stranger's house. I could almost hear his voice answering in my memory, protect what we built, Maggie. I decided to start documenting everything. Every unauthorized expense. Every missed rent. Every text message. I didn't know yet how far this would go, but my instincts told me, this wasn't about temporary help anymore. The next few weeks, Samantha kept calling, always with that same syrupy tone. Mom, are you keeping up with taxes? That's a lot of paperwork for one person. Have you updated your will lately? It's important to plan these things while you're healthy. Each time, I smiled and played along, giving vague answers. I wanted her to believe I was clueless. Because if there's one thing life has taught me, it's this, you never show your strength too early. The day they finally showed their true colors was coming. And when it did, I would be ready. It was a spring afternoon when Samantha invited me to lunch, smiling like a cat who'd already caught her mouse. I didn't know it yet, but that meal would change everything. It was a warm spring afternoon when Samantha invited me to lunch at a little cafe downtown. She sounded unusually cheerful on the phone. Just us girls, she said. I thought we could talk. Her tone was sweet, but too polished, like honey poured over glass. I almost said no, but something in me wanted to see what game she was playing. When I arrived, she was already seated at a corner table, wearing oversized sunglasses and that same bright red lipstick she always used when she wanted attention. She waved me over as if we were close friends. Margaret, she said, standing up to hug me. Her perfume was so strong it made my eyes water. You look lovely today. How's retirement treating you? I smiled politely. I'm not retired, Samantha. I still manage my properties. She laughed softly, brushing her hair back. Oh, right. You're always working. You really should take it easy. You've earned your rest. There it was again, that subtle emphasis on my age. We ordered coffee and a slice of pie. For a few minutes, she made small talk about Olivia's school and Ethan's new business idea. Then her tone shifted. She leaned in, voice lower, eyes sharp. You know, Margaret, it's impressive what you've done. Not many women your age can say they built a fortune. But you've had your time. Now it's time to think about the next generation. I felt my chest tighten. What are you saying? She smiled, sliding a folder across the table. Ethan and I talked about it. We think it's best if you transfer your rental properties to us now. It'll save taxes later and make everything easier. I stared at the papers. Legal documents. Ownership transfer forms. You want me to sign my properties over to you? I asked quietly. Her smile didn't falter. It's not about taking anything from you. We just want to help. You don't need all that stress at your age. We'll take care of you. I looked at her, this woman who had once called my home quaint, who spent money like water and never lifted a finger to earn it. I don't recall asking for your help, I said. Her expression flickered, just for a second. Then she put on another fake smile. Margaret, please. Let's not make this difficult. You've done enough. It's time to pass the torch. I reached across the table, pushed the folder back toward her, and said calmly, if I wanted advice on my affairs, I'd ask for it. And if you ever bring this up again, you'll regret it. She froze, her smile stiff. You're making a mistake. No, I said. I'm preventing one. I stood up, dropped a few dollars on the table for my coffee, and left without another word. Outside, the wind felt cooler. My hands trembled, not from fear, from realization. It wasn't just greed anymore. This was a plot. Carefully planned, beautifully acted, and about to get uglier. That night, Ethan called. His voice was tense. "Mom, Samantha told me you refused to sign. She's just trying to help. Why are you being so stubborn?" I almost couldn't believe what I was hearing. My son, my own son, taking her side. "I'm not being stubborn," I said softly. "I'm being smart." He sighed. "You're overthinking this. We just want what's fair." "Fair?" I repeated, my voice shaking. "Fair is me spending 40 years building something so you'd never have to beg anyone for a living. Fair is me burying your father and still finding a way to keep you fed and in school. And now you call that selfish?" He didn't respond. Just silence. Then the line went dead. I sat there in the dark for a long time, staring at the phone. I had never felt so alone. But something deep inside me shifted that night. The kind of shift you can't undo. Because when people you love betray you once, you can cry. When they do it twice, you fight. And I had just decided, it was time to fight. The next morning, I woke up to something strange, a letter from the county tax office. 2 of my properties were listed as delinquent. My stomach dropped. Someone had changed my mailing address. And I already knew who. The envelope trembled in my hands as I read it again and again, hoping I had misunderstood. But there it was in black ink, 2 of my rental homes listed under delinquent property taxes. Impossible. I never missed a payment in my life. I called the county office immediately. The woman on the other end checked the records. "Mrs. Lane, it looks like your mailing address was recently updated. We sent several notices to your new address in Chicago. Chicago. Ethan City." I hung up slowly, my heart pounding. My own son had redirected my tax mail. Why? To make me look irresponsible? Or to get his hands on my properties? I drove straight to his house, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles went white. When I arrived, Samantha opened the door with that same fake smile that made my stomach turn. "Margaret." "What a surprise," she said. I held up the letter. "You want to explain this?" Her eyes flickered for half a second before she tilted her head innocently. "Oh, that? Ethan must have filled out some forms for you. You've been so busy." "We were just helping." "Helping?" I said, my voice low. "By changing my address on official property documents?" Ethan appeared behind her, frowning like a scolded child. "Mom, calm down. We were trying to make things easier. You're always stressed about the paperwork." "Easier for who?" I asked. Samantha's tone hardened. "You're not getting any younger, Margaret. Sooner or later, someone's going to need to step in." That was the first time I saw it clearly, the greed in her eyes. Not hidden anymore, not pretending. Just bold, hungry greed. I left before I said something I couldn't take back. The drive home was a blur. By the time I pulled into my driveway, I could barely breathe. I sat at my kitchen table, the same place where I'd balanced books for years, and felt the weight of something far worse than betrayal. It wasn't just about money. It was about control. They weren't waiting for me to get old, they were trying to push me there. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak in the house sounded like footsteps, every shadow looked like a threat. For the first time in my life, I was scared of my own family. The next morning, I went to the bank to review my accounts. Several small withdrawals had been made, amounts just small enough not to trigger alerts. Each one signed with my name. A forgery. They were building a case against me. To the outside world, it would look like I was losing control of my finances. Forgetting things. Making mistakes. It hit me all at once. they were trying to make me look incompetent. If they could prove I wasn't capable of managing my affairs, the court could hand my estate over to them. It was brilliant, and evil. I sat in my car outside the bank, tears running down my face. I wasn't crying because of what they were taking. I was crying because of what I'd lost long before the money, my son's loyalty. When I got home, I walked straight to the mantel and took down Robert's old photograph. "You were right," I whispered. "Greed is the one thing even family can't cure." That night, I made a decision. If they wanted to play dirty, I'd show them what experience looks like. Because I wasn't going to let them destroy what I built. Not now. Not ever. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat at the edge of my bed, staring at the floor, my mind running in circles. Every corner of that house held memories of Robert, his laughter, his smell, the sound of his boots on the porch. And now it all felt tainted, like even the walls knew what Ethan and Samantha were trying to do. By morning, I felt hollow. I tried to eat breakfast, but the taste of food made me sick. I'd built my entire life on love and loyalty, now both had turned to poison. When the phone rang, I almost didn't answer. It was Ethan. "Mom, can we come by tonight? There are some things we need to discuss." His voice sounded rehearsed, like someone reading a script. I told him no. He said they were coming anyway. That evening, they showed up without knocking. Samantha looked perfect as always, glossy hair, designer bag, the smell of expensive perfume. Ethan stood behind her, his face pale and tight. Samantha spoke first. "Margaret, this tension between us isn't healthy. We care about you. We're just worried about how you've been managing things lately." I folded my arms. "Managing things? Or managing me?" She smiled faintly, tilting her head. "You've missed payments, misplaced documents, forgotten appointments." I slammed my hand on the table. "Because someone changed my address and forged my signature." Her expression didn't change. If anything, she looked amused. "You're imagining things. Maybe you should talk to someone, professionally." That word hung in the air, professionally. She was hinting that I'd lost my mind. Ethan stepped forward, his voice gentle. "Mom, we're not against you. We just think it's time for you to let us help." I looked at him, my son, the boy who once couldn't sleep without his nightlight. His eyes were colder now. Distant. "I don't need your help," I said, my voice trembling. "And I don't need your wife telling me what to do." Samantha leaned against the counter, smiling like she'd won. "You'll change your mind soon enough. People your age always do." She turned to leave, but not before whispering as she passed me, "You can't fight time, Margaret." When they walked out, I locked the door and slid down to the floor. For the first time in years, I cried, not soft tears, but deep, angry sobs that shook my chest. That was the moment I broke. Not because I was weak, but because breaking was the only way to rebuild myself stronger. I called my lawyer the next morning, Carol Jennings, a sharp woman I'd met years ago during a tenant dispute. I told her everything. The forged signatures. The changed address. The subtle campaign to make me look incompetent. She listened quietly, then said, "I've seen this before, Mrs. Lane. Don't react emotionally. Let's build a case." Quietly. She helped me transfer my properties into a revocable trust, my name, my terms, no loopholes. Then she advised me to stay calm, act confused if I had to, and keep collecting proof. For the next few weeks, I did exactly that. When Samantha called to check in, I let her believe I was tired and forgetful. I started recording every call, keeping every text. Ethan stopped calling altogether, except when money was mentioned. But I wasn't the helpless old woman they thought I was. I was the same woman who raised a child on her own, built an empire from nothing, and survived heartbreak that would have broken most people. And if they wanted to see what I was capable of, they were about to find out. Because I'd stopped being their victim. Now, I was their lesson. I spent the next few mornings sitting on my porch with a notebook, pretending to write grocery lists. In truth, I was building my plan, slow, careful, quiet. Every good fight starts with patience. And patience was something I'd earned through years of fixing leaky roofs, collecting rent from stubborn tenants, and surviving a world that never gave me anything for free. My first move was simple: make them think I'd given up. I stopped arguing with Samantha on the phone. When she called to check in, I answered softly, letting my voice tremble a little. "Oh, dear, I've been feeling so tired lately," I'd say. "Maybe you're right, maybe I should rest more." It worked like bait on a hook. Her tone grew sweeter by the day. "Don't worry, Margaret," she'd coo. "Ethan and I will handle things. Just focus on your health." What she didn't know was that every word of those calls was being recorded. My second move was to tighten my circle. I reached out to Carol, my lawyer, almost every other day. We set up an official trust document, airtight, signed, sealed, notarized. Every house, every bank account, every title was placed safely in my name, with Carol as co-trustee. Nothing could be moved or sold without my explicit consent. That trust became my armor. Then came the hardest part, acting helpless while quietly collecting their lies. I'd call Ethan pretending to forget small details. "Sweetheart, did I already pay the taxes for Maple Street?" I'd ask. He'd sigh and mutter to Samantha in the background. "See? She's getting forgetful." Exactly what I wanted him to think. Each time they underestimated me, I felt a spark of satisfaction. They thought they were weaving a trap around me, but really, they were tying the rope around their own necks. One afternoon, I drove to the property they were living in, the same house they'd remodeled with my money. I parked a few streets away and watched quietly as Samantha posed for a photo shoot in front of the new gate, showing off her dream home on social media. Every post she made became another piece of evidence, time-stamped proof that she'd used my funds for personal gain. Later that night, I printed screenshots, receipts, call logs, and bank statements. I stored everything in a thick brown folder labeled just in case. I wasn't ready to expose them yet. I wanted to wait until their confidence became arrogance, until they'd convinced themselves that I was beaten. And I didn't have to wait long. A week later, I got a text from Samantha. "Hi Margaret, just checking if you've thought more about transferring the properties. We found a great notary who can make it quick and easy." I smiled, shaking my head. "Not yet, dear," I replied. "But soon." Then I called Carol. "Prepare the eviction notice," I said. Her tone was sharp. "You're sure you want to do this now?" "Yes," I told her. "I've waited long enough." 2 days later, I drove to their house, stood on the front porch, and taped the official eviction letter to their shiny new metal gate. The paper fluttered in the wind, bold black letters spelling notice to vacate. When Samantha came outside, her eyes widened. She ripped the paper off, storming toward me. "You can't do this," she screamed. "Oh, but I can," I said, calm as ever. "You have 10 days to move out. The sheriff's office will handle the rest." Her face went pale. And as I turned to leave, I felt something I hadn't felt in months: peace. For once, the power was back where it belonged. The morning they were due to leave, I brewed myself a cup of coffee and sat by the window, watching the sun rise over the street. I'd been awake since dawn, waiting for this moment, the moment my house would finally breathe again. At 8 a.m., a black sheriff's SUV pulled up in front of the property. The officer stepped out, his posture calm and professional. A minute later, I saw Samantha rush to the door in her robe, her hair messy, phone in hand. She started yelling before he even reached the porch. "This is harassment. You can't do this," she shouted, waving her phone in the air. The officer spoke firmly, showing her the court order. "Ma'am, this eviction is legal. You were given notice. You need to leave the premises today." Her voice cracked. "This is my house." The officer turned to her and said, "According to the paperwork, this house belongs to Mrs. Margaret Lane." I stepped out of my car and walked toward them. The air was crisp, the kind that makes every sound sharper. Samantha froze when she saw me. Her face turned white. "You," she hissed. "You think you've won?" I smiled softly. "I didn't come here to win, Samantha. I came to take back what's mine." Behind her, Ethan appeared in the doorway, his head hanging low. His voice was quiet. "Mom, please. Don't do this." I looked at him, really looked at him. He wasn't the boy I raised. He was tired, beaten, but still clinging to pride that wasn't his. "I gave you every chance to make things right," I said. "You made your choice." The officer interrupted. "Ma'am, you'll need to start removing your belongings." Samantha spun around, screaming at Ethan. "Do something." But he didn't. He just stood there, staring at the floor while she threw things into boxes, muttering under her breath. I could hear her calling me names, words I'd never imagined my own family would say about me. I didn't respond. I didn't have to. By noon, they were gone. The car trunk was packed, the gate was left open, and the marble kitchen counters they'd bragged about glistened in the sunlight, empty, silent, mine again. I walked through the house slowly, touching the walls, breathing in the stillness. It smelled like paint and dust, but also like freedom. For the first time in months, I didn't feel fear in these walls. I felt power. Later that week, the local newspaper reached out to me. Word had spread about the eviction, and they wanted a quote about my business recovery. I agreed, but only under one condition, that they also include my new project. A month before all this, I'd quietly sold one of my smaller properties. The profit wasn't for me. I used it to start a scholarship for single mothers who wanted to study real estate, women like me, who'd lost everything but refused to stay down. The headline ran 2 days later, "Widow turns family betrayal into a mission for empowerment." Samantha saw it. I know she did. She posted a furious rant online accusing me of selling family property out of spite. The post backfired, people flooded her comments calling her ungrateful. Sponsors dropped her within a week. Karma doesn't need an invitation. Ethan didn't call. Not for weeks. But I heard through a friend that he'd moved out of Samantha's apartment and was living alone in a small rental outside the city. Sometimes, revenge doesn't come with shouting or fighting. Sometimes, it's as quiet as a signature, as gentle as watching someone trip on the lies they built. That day, as I locked up the house, I whispered to myself, "Robert, it's done. They'll never steal another thing from us again." I thought the war was over. But the next letter that came in the mail proved otherwise. A thick white envelope sat on my doormat one morning, stamped with bold black letters, "Summons to appear in court." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My hand shook as I tore it open. Inside was a petition. Ethan and Samantha were challenging my mental competence. They were asking the court to declare me unfit to handle my own affairs and to grant them control of my estate. They hadn't just lost, they wanted revenge. I sat at the kitchen table staring at the papers until my vision blurred. My own son was willing to drag me through court, to paint me as an unstable old woman just to take what I built. When I called my lawyer, Carol, her voice was steady but grim. "I've seen this play out before, Mrs. Lane. Don't worry, we'll fight it. But we'll need to be thorough." Thorough. That word comforted me. Because I had been thorough for months. We spent the next week gathering everything, the receipts for the credit card charges Samantha made, the bank statements with forged withdrawals, screenshots of her social media posts bragging about renovations, and, most importantly, the recorded phone calls. Every lie they told, every manipulation, every moment they mocked me behind polite words. Carol organized everything into neat folders. "We're ready," she said. The hearing took place in early autumn. The courthouse smelled faintly of paper and polish, the kind of place where truth and pride go to die quietly. Ethan and Samantha sat together at the plaintiff's table, both dressed like they'd stepped out of a magazine. Samantha's hair was perfect, but her smile was cold. Ethan wouldn't look at me. The judge, an older woman with sharp eyes, began the proceedings. Mrs. Lane, your son and daughter-in-law claim you're no longer capable of managing your estate responsibly. They allege confusion, missed payments, and poor judgment. Samantha's lawyer stood up and started reading from their statement. Her voice was smooth, rehearsed. She painted a picture of an old woman losing touch with reality. My throat tightened, but I stayed silent. When it was our turn, Carol rose calmly, her tone like steel wrapped in silk. Your Honor, she said, we have evidence that this is not concern, it's exploitation. She laid out the documents, one by one. Each paper hit the table like a hammer. The forged signature. The address change. The unauthorized remodeling. Then she clicked play on a recording. Samantha's voice filled the room, dripping with arrogance. Once she's declared incompetent, those houses are ours, Ethan. Just sign the damn papers. The courtroom went silent. Samantha's face drained of color. Ethan's jaw tightened. The judge leaned back, eyes narrowing. Mrs. Lane, she said, you've been quiet through all this. Would you like to speak? I stood slowly, my knees weak but my voice clear. Your Honor, I'm not losing my mind. I'm losing my family. And that's the hardest thing any mother can face. I paused, letting the silence fill the room. But I didn't build my life through confusion or luck. I built it with work, with discipline, with honesty. Everything I have, I earned. And I won't let greed rewrite that truth. The judge nodded once. Then she turned to Samantha and Ethan. I've heard enough. This case is dismissed, with prejudice. The gavel struck. I didn't cheer. I didn't smile. I just looked at my son one last time. He couldn't meet my eyes. Samantha grabbed her purse and stormed out, her heels echoing down the hall. Carol touched my arm gently. You won, Mrs. Lane. I shook my head. No, Carol. I just survived. As I stepped out into the autumn air, the wind carried the faint smell of rain. The courthouse behind me felt like a grave for everything I once believed about family. But somewhere inside that grief, a small spark of peace began to grow. Because sometimes justice isn't about victory, it's about finally being seen for who you really are. The house was quiet again. Too quiet. For weeks after the hearing, I'd wake up expecting the sound of the phone ringing, expecting another battle to fight, another paper to sign, another wound to reopen. But none came. The silence felt strange, like standing in a room after a storm and realizing you're still alive. I started watering my garden again, the same roses Samantha had once torn out of her rental yard. I planted new ones, deep red, the color of survival. Every petal felt like a reminder, they tried to bury me, but I grew anyway. One afternoon, as I sat on my porch drinking tea, a familiar car pulled into the driveway. It was Ethan's. He stepped out slowly, dressed plainly, no designer watch, no arrogance. Just my son, smaller than I remembered. He walked toward me, his eyes swollen from lack of sleep. For a moment, we said nothing. Then he took a deep breath. Mom, he said softly, I'm sorry. I didn't answer right away. I studied his face, the face I once kissed goodnight every evening, now lined with regret. He kept talking, voice breaking. I don't know what I was thinking. I let her control everything. I lost my job, my marriage, my friends. I lost you. The wind rustled through the trees as I set my teacup down. Samantha? I asked. He nodded. Gone. She filed for divorce 2 months after the case. Said she couldn't be with someone who'd embarrassed her publicly. I sighed. There was no victory in hearing that, just sadness. You made your choices, Ethan. I know, he whispered. But I want to make things right. If you'll let me. I looked at him, searching for the boy I once knew. Maybe he was still in there somewhere, buried beneath the greed and pride. I didn't answer yes, but I didn't say no either. Instead, I simply said, healing takes time. He nodded, tears welling in his eyes. For the first time in years, he hugged me, and I let him. After he left, I sat there for a long time, listening to the soft hum of the city beyond my quiet street. Peace doesn't always come in grand moments. Sometimes it's just a deep breath on your porch, watching the sun dip low, knowing you survived what was meant to break you. A few months later, I received an invitation to an award ceremony. The scholarship fund I'd started had already helped 3 single mothers complete their real estate licenses. They wanted to honor me as their Woman of the Year. Standing at that podium, looking out at those women, strong, tired, but unbroken, I felt tears in my eyes. Don't ever let anyone make you feel like your time is over, I told them. Because strength doesn't age, and wisdom doesn't fade. When I went home that night, I sat on my porch again, just as I had after Robert's death, after every storm life had thrown my way. The air smelled like rain, and the wind carried the quiet hum of the city. I looked up at the stars and whispered, "We did it, Robert. We kept everything safe." Then I smiled, a small, peaceful smile. Not because I'd won, but because I'd healed. They thought my time was over. But my time never ended. It just began.